The morning started like any other Tuesday on the orbital station. Lieutenant Danny Pierce sat at his desk, watching the screens that showed empty space. He had been doing this job for 3 years now. Most days, nothing happened. He would drink his coffee, check the sensors, and count the hours until his shift ended. But today was different. A signal appeared on his screen. It was weak and hard to see, but it was there. Danny leaned forward and touched the controls. The signal became clearer. His heart started beating faster. This was not normal space noise. This was a message. He stood up quickly and called across the room. "Commander Hayes, you need to see this right now." Elizabeth Hayes walked over fast. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. She had been in the military for 20 years and had seen many strange things. But when she looked at the screen, her face became serious. "Where is this coming from?" she asked. Danny worked on the computer, his fingers moving quickly. "It is coming from very far away, about 200 light-years from here. The signal has been traveling through space for a very long time." Elizabeth watched the screen carefully. "Can you make it clearer? I need to hear what it says." Danny nodded and started cleaning up the signal. The static noise slowly went away. Then they heard a voice. It spoke in the common language that many alien species used for trade and communication. "This is the colony ship Meridian's Hope. We are under attack. We need help from anyone who can hear this. They came without warning. They do not talk to us. They do not want to negotiate. They only destroy everything. If anyone hears this message, please help us. We have families here. We have children. Please help." The message played again and again. Each time it played, the voice sounded more distant and broken. Then came other sounds. People were screaming. Guns were firing. Then everything went silent. Danny and Elizabeth stood very still. They looked at each other, and both knew what they had to do. "Get me Admiral Patterson right now," Elizabeth said. 1 hour later, the message reached Earth's military headquarters. Admiral Gregory Patterson was an old soldier who had spent his whole life protecting humanity. He stood in front of the Emergency Council in Geneva. The room was filled with important leaders from all over Earth. Patterson played the message for everyone. The room became very quiet as they listened to the desperate voices calling for help. "We have been hearing stories for months," Patterson said. "Ships disappearing, colonies losing contact with everyone. The alien coalition told us it was just technical problems or pirates. But this message proves they were wrong. Something dangerous is out there." A woman named Victoria Lane spoke up. She was the council chair. "Admiral, that message is 200 years old. By the time it reached us, those people were already dead. We cannot help them now." Patterson nodded slowly. "You are right, ma'am. Those people are gone. But whatever killed them is still out there. We have information that shows this threat is moving closer to other worlds. The aliens in the coalition have been ignoring this problem. They hope it will just go away. But we know better than that." He showed them a map of space. There were many red marks on it. Each mark was a place where people had stopped sending messages. Dozens of worlds, hundreds of settlements. All silent now. "Humanity learned something a long time ago," Patterson continued. "We learned that you do not ignore calls for help. You do not abandon people just because helping them is difficult. Our ancestors knew this. When someone is in trouble, you help them. That is what makes us human." The council members talked among themselves for a few minutes. Then they voted. Everyone voted yes. Earth would send its military forces to help. Not to protect Earth itself, but to answer a call for help from people they never met. People who died before the message even reached them. The operation was called Guardian Angel. Within 3 days, every shipyard around Earth, Mars, and the Moon started working day and night. The fleet they would send would be huge. It would be the biggest military force humanity had ever put together. Captain Jake Morrison got his orders while he was on patrol near the edge of the solar system. His ship, the Defiant, was told to return to Mars immediately. They needed to prepare for a long journey into deep space. Jake was 42 years old. He had been a ship captain for 10 years. He had fought pirates and dealt with criminals, but he had never been in a real war. As he read the information about the mission, he felt cold fear in his stomach. The enemy was unknown. Nobody knew how many there were. They had destroyed entire colonies without leaving any survivors. And humanity was going to sail right into their territory with every warship they had. "Set course for Mars," Jake told his crew. "Go as fast as possible." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Sophie Grant, looked worried. "Sir, can I speak freely?" "Yes, go ahead." "Are we really doing this? Going into unknown space to fight an enemy we know nothing about? Those people who sent the message are already dead. Why are we risking our lives?" Jake looked at the young officer. He saw his own doubts in her eyes. Then he thought about that message again. He thought about families hiding while death came for them. He thought about the silence that followed. "Yes, Lieutenant, we are doing this. Someone has to do it. If we, the shipyards around Mars, had never been so busy. Day and night, workers prepared the fleet for battle." Captain Jake Morrison stood at a window on the orbital station, watching dozens of ships being armed and supplied. "It looks scary," said a voice behind him. Jake turned around and saw Commander Lisa Park. She was an old friend from military school. Now she commanded a heavy cruiser called the Valiant. Her black hair had some gray in it, and she looked tired. "Lisa, it has been a long time." "5 years," she said, standing next to him. "I heard you volunteered to go in the first group." "Someone has to lead," Jake replied. "Might as well be those of us who have experience." Lisa looked worried. "But do we really know what we are doing? All we know is that something out there is killing entire colonies. No survivors, no evidence, just silence." Through the window, they could see the human warships. They did not look beautiful like alien ships. Human ships were covered with weapons and thick armor. They looked like machines built only for war. "The alien coalition sent representatives today," Lisa said. "There is a meeting in 2 hours. All senior officers have to attend." Jake sighed. "Let me guess. They will tell us we are overreacting." "Probably, but we still have to go." The meeting room was full of human military officers. Admirals, captains, and commanders filled every seat. At the front of the room stood 3 aliens from the coalition. One looked like a giant insect. One was made of crystal. One looked like a big cat with golden fur. The insect alien started speaking. Its name was hard to pronounce in human language. "Dear human friends, we understand your concern about the incidents in Sector 77 Alpha. But the Coalition Council believes that sending so many warships is not necessary. It might cause more problems." Voices of disagreement came from the human officers. Admiral Patterson stood up. His voice was loud and clear. "Representative, our analysis shows that 47 colonies have gone silent in the past year. That is not just incidents. That is genocide." The crystal alien made a sound like soft music. "Admiral, you must understand that the coalition has existed for 3,000 years. We have survived many threats. This problem will pass too. Sending a war fleet might make whoever is doing this angry." "Make them angry." Captain Lisa Park stood up. Her voice was sharp. "They are already killing everyone they find. What exactly would we make them do that they are not already doing?" The cat-like alien stayed quiet but nodded slightly. Jake noticed this. Maybe not all coalition members agreed with what their leaders were saying. The insect alien continued, clicking its mouthparts. "The human species is young and acts without thinking. You have been part of the galactic community for less than 100 years. You do not understand the delicate balance of power. You do not understand the importance of careful response." "We understand perfectly," Patterson replied coldly. "You have grown comfortable and lazy. You have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. Humanity has not forgotten. We have spent our entire existence fighting to survive. We know what happens when predators are not stopped." The meeting became very loud with arguments. The alien representatives wanted everyone to be careful and wait. The human officers demanded immediate action. Finally, Patterson ended the discussion with a simple statement. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored representatives, this meeting is over. The human fleet will launch in 72 hours. We will go with or without coalition permission. Anyone who wants to join us is welcome. Anyone who wants to stay behind should move out of our way." As people left the room, The cat-like warrior approached Jake. Up close, the alien's yellow eyes showed deep understanding. "I am Warrior Prime Kresh," the alien said, in rough but understandable language. "My people remember what it is like to fight for survival. We remember the price of waiting too long." He paused. "I cannot speak for my government, but I have sent messages to my clan. Some will answer humanity's call." "We would be honored to fight with the Murkesh," Jake replied. "No," Kresh said softly. "It is we who will be honored. You are going to answer a call for help from beings you never met. You know you might die for people who are already dead. This is what true warriors do." He put his large paw on Jake's shoulder. "The galaxy has forgotten this. Perhaps humanity will teach them to remember." The next 3 days moved very fast. Final crew assignments were made, supplies were loaded onto ships, weapons were tested over and over. The fleet gathered in high orbit above Earth. There were 200 big warships, 400 smaller destroyers and frigates, and many support ships. It was the largest human military force ever brought together in one place. On the bridge of the Defiant, Jake watched his crew complete their final checks. Lieutenant Sophie Grant had been worried, but she was here anyway. Chief Engineer Paul Stevens reported that all systems were working. Weapons Officer Kelly Barnes confirmed that all weapons were ready. Navigator Chris Wade had the coordinates locked into the computer. "Captain," Sophie said quietly, "there is a message coming from Earth. It is being sent to the entire fleet." "Put it on screen." The view screen showed Admiral Patterson for a moment. Then the image changed to show a simple room where an old woman sat in a wheelchair. She looked almost 100 years old. Her face had many wrinkles, but her eyes were bright and clear. "My name is Helen Ross," she began. Her voice was thin but steady. 60 years ago, my daughter and her family joined a colony expedition to the frontier. We lost contact with them 40 years ago. I never knew what happened to them. I never knew if they died quickly or if they suffered. I never knew if they thought of home in their final moments." She paused, and Jake could see tears on her old face. "But I know this. No one came to help them. No one answered their call. And for 40 years, I have had to live with that knowledge." She looked directly at the camera. "To every man and woman in that fleet, I say this. You are going out there for people you never knew. You are going to fight a battle you might not win, because it is the right thing to do. My daughter's family is gone. But somewhere out there, someone else's family might still be saved." She raised her shaking hand in a military salute. "Bring them home. And if you cannot do that, make sure whatever killed them never does it again. Go with the prayers of every parent, every child, every person on Earth who knew the journey to Sector 77 Alpha took 3 weeks. The fleet moved through hyperspace in coordinated jumps, never going too far from each other." Captain Jake Morrison spent most of his time reading tactical reports and trying to prepare for an enemy they still knew nothing about. "Captain, incoming message from the Valiant," said Communications Officer Nathan Price. "Put her through." Commander Lisa Park's face appeared on the screen. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes showed she had not been sleeping well. "Jake, we are picking up something strange. About 6 light-years ahead, there is a debris field. It is very large, spreading across a huge area of space." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "Any survivors?" "No, but the wreckage is not too old. Maybe 10 to 15 years. Admiral Patterson wants a small group to investigate before the main fleet arrives. He has selected the Defiant, Valiant, and 3 Marrakesh ships." "Understood. When do we move?" 20 minutes. Patterson is calling it Operation First Light. We go in, gather information, and report back. No fighting unless necessary." The small group of ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the debris field. What they saw was difficult to understand at first. Thousands of ship pieces, station parts, and other wreckage drifted in a slowly expanding cloud. But what made it truly horrible was how big everything was. "Dear God," breathed Sophie Grant from her position at the tactical station. "Those are not patrol boats or merchant ships. Those are colony ships, hundreds of them." Jake studied the sensor readings. His blood felt cold. Each of those massive ships could carry 50,000 people. If even half were full when they were destroyed, millions of people had died here. Look for data recorders, black boxes, anything that might tell us what happened, he ordered. And everyone stay alert. Whatever did this might still be around. The ships spread out, scanning carefully. Chief Engineer Paul Stevens found the first intact data recorder. It came from the broken remains of what had been a defense platform. Captain, you need to hear this. The recording was damaged, but parts of it were clear enough to understand. Unknown contacts approaching. 6 signatures. No, wait, 12 now. 24. They are multiplying somehow. Opening fire. Weapons are not working well. Shields at 70%, 50%. Oh God, they are eating through the hull. They are not ships. It is a swarm. It is alive. Pull back. All ships pull back. It is not attacking us. It is consuming us. The ships are being taken apart. I can see them pulling the Meridian's Hope to pieces like insects eating meat from bones. Static covered the rest of the message. Play that last part again, Jake ordered. They listened 3 more times. Each time made the situation clearer and more frightening. This was not war as they understood it. This was something else completely. Captain, we are getting similar reports from the other ships, Nathan said. Warrior Prime Kresh is asking for a command meeting. They gathered virtually. Holographic images of each ship's captain appeared on their bridges. Kresh's cat-like features showed deep concern. This explains much, the Mrakesh warrior said. The Coalition has been treating this as a military threat. But this is not war. This is predation. Predation on a huge scale, Lisa Park added. If I am reading these sensor logs correctly, whatever this swarm is, it is not just destroying ships. It is harvesting them, breaking them down for materials. Jake pulled up a holographic display showing what was left in the debris field. Look at this. The wreckage that remains is mostly ceramics and composite materials. Everything metal is gone. Every biological component is gone. Even the ice that would have been water supplies. They took everything that could be consumed. A self-replicating machine swarm, Sophie Grant said quietly, designed to harvest resources and build more of themselves. But who built them? Nathan asked. And why? Does it matter? Kresh growled. What matters is stopping them. How do you kill a swarm that multiplies faster than you can destroy it? That question hung in the air as they continued investigating. Over the next 6 hours, they recovered 17 more data recorders. They pieced together what had happened during the attack. What emerged was a picture of methodical, relentless destruction. The swarm had arrived without warning. Millions of small units, each about the size of a human fist. They moved with perfect coordination, overwhelming shields through sheer numbers. Once they touched a ship's hull, they began taking it apart at the molecular level. They used the harvested materials to build more units. The colonists had fought back, but normal weapons were almost useless. Energy weapons could destroy individual units, but the swarm just flowed around the gaps. Physical weapons were better, but there were too many targets. Within hours, an entire convoy of colony ships, their military escorts, and 2 defense platforms had been reduced to worthless scraps floating in space. We need to report this to Admiral Patterson immediately, Jake said. This changes everything. Agreed, Lisa confirmed. But Jake, look at this analysis I'm running. The debris field is expanding, but not evenly. It is spreading in one specific direction. She showed the pattern on the tactical display. The wreckage was thickest where the attack happened, but grew thinner along one path. They moved on, Jake realized with horror. After consuming everything here, they moved deeper into Coalition space. Following the colonization routes, Sophie added. Going from settlement to settlement. Kresh's ears flattened against his skull. We must pursue. If they have been feeding and making more of themselves for 200 years. He did not need to finish. They all understood. The swarm they would face now would be much, much larger than the one that destroyed this convoy. Before they could begin the journey back to the main fleet, alarms screamed across every bridge at the same time. Sensors had detected something coming out of hyperspace, something massive. Contact detected, Nathan reported. His voice was rising in pitch. It is very big, sir. The mass readings are impossible. What are we looking at? Jake demanded. Multiple contacts, thousands of them, all small individual signatures. But they are moving in perfect formation. The combined mass equals a small moon. On the view screen, space seemed to shimmer and tear. What came through was a nightmare made real. A cloud of glittering metallic objects, each catching and reflecting starlight. They moved with impossible coordination, forming complex patterns that shifted and flowed like a living thing. "How many?" Lisa's voice came through the communication system, steady despite the fear. "We estimate 7 million individual units," Sophie reported. "And they have detected us. The formation is changing. They are moving toward us. All ships, evasive action," Jake ordered. "Best speed back to the fleet. Do not engage. Do not slow down. Just run." The small group of ships turned and accelerated. Their engines screamed as they poured power into the hyperspace drives. But the swarm was fast. Terrifyingly fast. Individual units began breaking away from the main mass, pursuing at speeds that should have been impossible. "They are gaining on us," Paul Stevens reported from engineering. "We are at maximum speed, but they are still getting closer." "How long until we can jump?" Jake asked. 4 minutes to charge the drive. "We are not going to make it, sir." Jake's mind raced. 4 minutes was too long. The swarm would catch them in less than 1 minute. "All ships, prepare to fight," he ordered. "Weapons free. Target the pursuing units. Try to reduce their numbers before they reach us." The Defiant's defense systems came alive, joined by fire from the other ships. Space lit up with weapons fire. Thousands of rounds per second streamed toward the pursuing swarm. Units exploded and fell behind. But for everyone destroyed, 10 more took its place. "This is not working," Sophie said. "For every unit we kill, they are deploying 2 more from the main mass." Then Kresh's voice cut through the chaos. "Human vessels, break formation and scatter on my mark. My ships will cover your escape." "Negative," Jake responded. "We do not leave people behind. You must. Our shields are designed differently than yours, stronger against small impacts. We can hold them longer. And if we all die here, no one warns the fleet. This is a warrior's choice, Captain Morrison. Honor it." Jake's hands clenched on his armrests. Every instinct screamed against it, but he knew Kresh was right. They needed to warn Patterson. Someone had to survive. "Godspeed, Warrior Prime." Admiral Gregory Patterson stood in the command center of his flagship, the Indomitable. He was studying the reports from the small group that had gone ahead. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the fleet. They also showed the projected path of the swarm. Captain Jake Morrison finished his report. His face looked tired from lack of sleep and from the weight of losing Kresh and his warriors. "They bought us time with their lives," Jake concluded. "But Admiral, the swarm has been operating in coalition space for 200 years. It has had time to grow and evolve. What we saw might have been just a small part of its total size." "What is your estimate of the swarm's size?" Patterson asked. Lisa Park pulled up a series of calculations. "If it has been converting every ship, station, and settlement into more units, and if it grows exponentially, we could be looking at billions or even trillions of individual units." A stunned silence fell over the command center. The numbers were almost impossible to understand. "How do you fight something like that?" asked Admiral Susan Wright. She commanded the fleet's second battle group. "Normal tactics assume you can destroy more of the enemy than you lose, but this thing replaces its losses faster than we can create them." "Then we do not fight it in a normal way," Patterson replied. He pulled up a different display, showing something Jake did not immediately recognize. "Commander Park, during your investigation, you noted that the swarm was consuming everything except certain materials. Why?" Lisa frowned, thinking. "We assumed it was because those materials had no value. They are mostly silicates and carbon chains. Difficult to break down at the molecular level." "Exactly. Which means the swarm has weaknesses. It is optimized for certain types of consumption, but not others." Patterson zoomed in on the image. "This is a Nova bomb. We have had them in development for 30 years but never used one. It is a fusion device designed to trigger a chain reaction in a star's core." "You want to lure the swarm into a solar system and blow up the star?" Jake asked, both horrified and amazed. "Not just any system," Patterson clarified. "According to the data you recovered, the swarm is heading toward the Talax cluster. That region has over 40 inhabited systems. If it reaches them, billions of people will die. But between here and there is the Corvin system. It has a red giant star with no inhabited planets. The star is already unstable and dying. Admiral Wright understood immediately. We make our stand at Corvin. We dig in and fortify our positions. When the swarm arrives, we lure it close to the star and trigger the nova. The radiation and heat should overwhelm the units. It is suicide, Lisa said flatly. Any ship close enough to lure the swarm will be caught in the blast. Not if we use automated drones, Patterson replied. We load them with the materials the swarm prefers, metals and biological waste, make them attractive targets. While the swarm is feeding, we detonate the nova bomb. And if it does not work? Jake asked. If the swarm survives or splits apart before we trigger the device? Patterson's face was grim. Then we have a backup plan. We have 30 fusion warheads in the fleet. We put them on manned vessels with deadman switches. We ram them into the swarm. One way or another, we stop it at Corvin. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. This was not just a military operation anymore. It was potentially a one-way trip for all of them. Admiral, Jake said carefully, permission to speak freely? Go ahead. Sir, we came out here to save lives. If we are talking about suicide missions, maybe we should reconsider. The Coalition has larger fleets and more resources. Perhaps we should pull back and convince them to help. Patterson shook his head. Captain, I spent the last week trying to do exactly that. The Coalition Council is still arguing about whether this is even a real threat. By the time they finish talking, the Talax cluster will be dead. We are all those people have. He pulled up an image on the central display. It showed a blue and green world, very similar to Earth. Visible city lights dotted the night side. This is Talax Prime, home to 4 billion people across 3 different species. They have no idea what is coming. They do not know that in 2 weeks, their entire civilization could be erased. Patterson looked around the room. I am not ordering anyone to die. But I am asking, who will stand with me to give them a chance? The response was immediate. Every officer in the room straightened. Their faces showed determination. Jake felt pride mixed with sadness. They all knew what they were volunteering for. They were doing it anyway. The next week was spent preparing frantically. The fleet established positions throughout the Corvin system. They turned it into a fortress filled with weapons platforms, minefields, and automated defense drones. Engineers worked around the clock to build the bomb and prepare the trigger mechanisms. On the Defiant, Jake walked through the ship's corridors. He saw quiet determination on every face. His crew knew the odds. They had all written letters home. They had recorded final messages for loved ones. But there was no panic, no despair. Just a grim resolve to complete the mission. He found Sophie Grant in the observation lounge. She was staring out at the red giant star that filled the viewport. The ancient sun's surface boiled with storms large enough to swallow Earth. Beautiful, is it not? Sophie said without turning. All that power, just waiting to be released? Jake stood beside her. Having second thoughts? Not about being here, about everything we did not do, everything we did not say. She finally looked at him. I never told my parents how much I appreciated them. Never thanked my teachers for believing in me. Never told a lot of people a lot of things. When we get through this, you will have time, Jake said. If we get through this, Sophie corrected. Sir, what happens to us? After, I mean. If we die stopping this thing, does anyone even remember? We are 200 light years from home, fighting an enemy most people do not even know exists. Jake thought carefully. Helen Ross will remember. The families of every colony will remember. And someday, when people look at the Talax cluster and see 4 billion living people, they will know that someone stood in the gap. That is enough for you? Being remembered by strangers? It has to be. Jake smiled sadly. Because the alternative is letting them die. And I cannot live with that. None of us can. Sophie nodded. They stood together in silence, watching the star burn. 3 days later, sensors detected the swarm's arrival. It came out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, a cloud of glittering death that stretched across millions of cubic kilometers. The fleet's analysts went pale as they calculated the numbers. We estimate 16 trillion individual units, reported the tactical officer on the Indomitable. Mass equivalent to a small moon. Admiral, nothing we have can fight something that large and survive. Then it is a good thing we are not planning to survive, Patterson replied calmly. All ships, begin Phase 1. Launch the bait drones. Across the fleet, cargo ships released their loads. 300 automated drones, each packed with refined metals and biological waste. The drones activated, broadcasting energy signatures designed to look like colony ships. The swarm reacted instantly. The massive cloud began moving toward the drones, accelerating as it detected the feeding opportunity. Individual units broke off from the main mass, racing ahead. Swarm has taken the bait, Lisa Park reported from the Valiant. They are moving into the target zone. Time to optimal detonation range is 4 hours. All ships, prepare for Phase 2, Patterson ordered. And may God have mercy on our souls. The fleet watched as the swarm descended on the drones. Within minutes, the automated vessels were consumed, torn apart and converted into more swarm units. But the bait had done its job. It drew the swarm deeper into the system, closer to the unstable red giant. 3 hours to detonation, the tactical officer announced. The waiting was the hardest part. The swarm, having consumed the drones, began spreading out and searching for more targets. It would not be long before it detected the fleet and attacked. Admiral, picking up something unusual, the sensor operator said. The swarm is splitting. A portion is moving toward us, but most of it is continuing toward the star. What? Patterson moved to study the display. About 80% of the swarm was ignoring the fleet, heading directly for the red giant. They are going to consume the star, Jake realized with horror. A red giant is mostly heavy elements. Everything they need, if they start feeding on the star itself. The Nova bomb will not work if they take the star apart before we can trigger it, Lisa finished. Admiral, we need to act now. Patterson's face was pale but calm. Implement Phase 3. All ships, we are going in. If we cannot lure them away from the star, we will stop them by force. Sir, that is suicide, Admiral Wright protested. The swarm heading for us has over 3 trillion units. If we move into open space, they will overwhelm us in minutes. I know, Patterson said quietly. But if that swarm starts feeding on the star, it will become unstoppable. Every star in the galaxy will become food. This is our only chance. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Guardian Actual. I will not lie to you. What I am about to order will likely kill everyone in this fleet, but if we do not act, billions will die. We give our lives, or we abandon those we came to save. The fleet will advance. Target the swarm units heading for the star. Buy time to detonate the Nova bomb. Remember, we did not come here to run. We came to make sure no one fights alone. The fleet surged forward. 200 human warsh. The first wave of swarm units hit the fleet like a wall of metal death. Point defense systems came to life, filling space with thousands of bullets every second. Destroyers and frigates formed a protective screen around the larger ships. Their smaller size let them move quickly and engage at close range. Captain Jake Morrison held tight to his command chair as the Defiant shook from impacts. Around him, his bridge crew worked with precision. Their training helped them overcome the terror they all felt. Shields at 60%, Paul Stevens reported from engineering. We cannot take this level of impact for more than 15 minutes. Then we make the next 15 minutes count, Jake replied. Sophie, focus fire on the densest groups. Try to create gaps in their formation. The Defiant's main guns fired in sequence. Each shot was carefully calculated to cause maximum damage. Fighting the swarm was different from normal warfare. You did not aim for critical systems. You just tried to destroy as many units as possible. Captain, the Valiant is reporting heavy damage, Nathan Price called out. Their port shields are failing. Jake did not hesitate. Helm, move to intercept. Position us between the Valiant and the swarm. Weapons, prepare for full broadside as soon as we are in position. Sir, that will expose our side, Sophie warned. I know, do it anyway. The Defiant turned with surprising grace for a ship her size. She slid into position just as the Valiant's shields collapsed. Swarm units that would have torn into the cruiser's hull instead met the destroyer's intact shields and heavy weapons fire. "Lisa, you owe me a drink after this," Jake sent on the communication channel. "You are buying," Lisa Park's voice came back, strained but grateful. "We are working to restore shields. Give us 2 minutes." "You have one. After that, we will both be scrap metal." Across the battle, similar acts of desperate heroism played out. The cruiser Vigilance sacrificed itself to protect 3 smaller destroyers. It rammed into a swarm group when its weapons failed. The carrier Falcon launched every fighter it had. The small craft darted through the swarm, buying time for the larger ships. And slowly, impossibly, they were making progress. The swarm heading for the star had been slowed. It was forced to send units to deal with the attacking fleet. But the cost was terrible. "Admiral Patterson is calling the fleet," Nathan reported. The Admiral's face appeared on every ship's main screen. Behind him, the Indomitable's bridge was chaos. Damage reports scrolled across displays. Crew members worked frantically. "All ships, this is Guardian Actual. The weapons team reports the Nova bomb is ready. We need to pull the swarm closer to the star. I am taking the Indomitable in. All remaining ships will form up and provide covering fire." "Sir, you cannot," Admiral Wright protested over the command channel. "If you get that close to the star, you will not be able to escape before detonation." "I know," Patterson replied calmly, "but someone has to make sure the swarm follows. The Indomitable has the most mass and the most refined materials. We will be irresistible to them." Jake felt his throat tighten. He had known Patterson for 15 years. The man was more than a commanding officer. He was a mentor and a friend. "Admiral, there has to be another way." "There is not, Captain. And even if there was, this is my choice." Patterson smiled, and there was something peaceful in his face. "Tell Earth we did what we came to do. Tell them the fleet stood together at the end." The Indomitable broke formation. Its massive engines drove it toward the Red Giant's outer atmosphere. The flagship was the pride of Earth's Navy, a heavy battleship covered with weapons and thick armor. Now it would serve as bait for a trap that would save billions. The swarm reacted exactly as predicted. Millions of units stopped attacking the fleet and streamed toward the Indomitable. They saw the ultimate prize, a massive vessel packed with everything they needed. "All ships, maximum fire on the swarm units pursuing the flagship," Jake ordered. "Keep them off the Admiral as long as possible." But there were too many. The swarm covered the Indomitable like insects on food. Patterson's voice came over the fleet channel one last time. "Fleet, this is Guardian Actual. It has been the honor of my life to serve with you. Remember, we did not come here for glory. We came because someone needed help. Tell the galaxy." His voice broke slightly. "Tell them humanity stands with those who cannot stand alone." The Indomitable's engines burned bright as it plunged into the star's outer atmosphere. It trailed a cloud of swarm units behind it. At the last moment, just before the heat became too much, Patterson's weapons officer triggered the Nova bomb. The star died. For one eternal second, nothing happened. Then the Red Giant's core compressed under forces it could no longer resist. Nuclear fusion accelerated out of control. The star's outer layers were blown away in an expanding shell of superheated gas. The Nova's light was blinding even through the fleet's darkened windows. In that terrible, beautiful explosion, trillions of swarm units simply stopped existing. The heat vaporized them instantly. Their molecular bonds broke under temperatures that exceeded a healthy star's core. The shockwaves scattered the units at the edges, tearing them apart with raw force. "Swarm numbers dropping," Sophie reported. Her voice was filled with awe. "It is working. They are being destroyed faster than they can replicate." But the Nova's expanding shell was also rushing toward the fleet. They had minutes, maybe less, before the radiation and debris reached their positions. "All ships, emergency jump," Jake ordered. "Scatter pattern. Meet at Rally Point Delta. Move now." Across the fleet, hyperspace drives engaged. Ships began disappearing, but not all made it. The destroyer Courage had a damaged drive. It could not charge fast enough. The frigate Relentless turned back, using its own jump field to pull the destroyer along. Both ships vanished just as the shockwave arrived. Whether they survived, no one would know until the meeting point. The Defiant jumped with seconds to spare. The last thing Jake saw was the expanding sphere of destruction. A new star being born from the death of the old one. Somewhere in that inferno, Admiral Patterson and the crew of the Indomitable had made their final stand. The fleet appeared at Rally Point Delta. It was an empty region of space 50 light-years from Corvin. Ships appeared in ones and twos. Their hulls were scarred and damaged but whole. The calls came in. Valiant present. Falcon present. Vigilant lost. Courage and relentless status unknown. When the count finished, Jake felt his heart sink. Of the 200 ships that had fought at Corvin, only 93 had made it to the rally point. Over half the fleet was gone. Tens of thousands of crew members were dead. But they had won. The swarm was destroyed, burned away in nuclear fire. The Talax cluster was safe. "Captain, we are receiving transmissions," Nathan said quietly. "From Coalition space. Multiple sources." "Sir, you need to hear this." The message played. Jake heard something he had not expected. Cheering. Thousands of voices from dozens of species, all celebrating. The news of humanity's stand had spread throughout Coalition space. The species that had dismissed Earth's warnings were now singing their praises. But one message stood out. It came from Talax Prime. From the 4 billion people who did not know how close they had come to death. "People of Earth, this is First Minister Kellen of Talax Prime. We just received word of what your fleet did at Corvin. We did not even know we were in danger. We had no idea death was coming until it was stopped by your sacrifice." There was a pause. Emotion was thick in the alien's voice. "You came for people you never met. You fought a battle we could not fight. You paid a price we can never repay. On behalf of every person on Talax Prime and throughout the cluster, thank you. Thank you for standing when no one else would." More messages came in, from colonies that had been next in the swarm's path, from species who had lost settlements in the initial attacks, from worlds throughout Coalition space who finally understood what had been destroyed. And then came a message that made Jake's hands shake. It was audio only, full of static, but unmistakably human. "This is Commander Helen Ross, speaking from the destroyer Courage. We made it, barely. The relentless captain jumped both our ships using his drive, burned out his engines doing it, but we are alive. Just wanted you all to know. The fleet holds. No one fights alone." Jake let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. Not everyone had survived, but more than he feared. They had won. And they had brought most of their people home. Over the next week, the surviving fleet began the long journey back to human space. They moved slowly, stopping to repair damaged ships and recover any survivors they could find. The Marrakesh sent representatives to escort them. A full honor guard of their best warriors. The Coalition Council, finally moved to action by humanity's sacrifice, sent supply ships and medical vessels. When the fleet finally entered the solar system 3 months later, they found Earth waiting. Every orbital platform was lit up in celebration. Ships from every human colony had gathered to welcome them home. Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiant as they approached Mars orbit. Through the windows, he could see the memorial being built. A massive structure in space, listing every name of every person who had died answering that ancient call for help. At the top, in letters that could be seen from Earth, were the words Admiral Patterson had spoken in those final moments. "We did not come here for glory. We came because someone needed help." "Captain," Sophie said, "we are being called. From Earth. From the council chambers." The screen showed not the council, but someone Jake recognized. Helen Ross, the old woman who had spoken to the fleet before they left. She was standing now, supported by 2 younger people. "Captain Morrison," she said. Her voice was stronger than before. "My name is Helen Ross. 60 years ago, I lost my daughter and her family. I never knew what happened to them, whether anyone tried to help. Today, I learned that someone did." Tears ran down her face. "You and your fleet went into the dark for people you never knew. My daughter's family is still gone. But because of what you did, other families get to stay together. Other parents will not lose their children to the silence." She raised her hand in salute. Jake found himself returning it. His own eyes were wet. "You brought honor to Earth, Captain. You brought honor to all of us. Welcome home." The transmission ended. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew, battered and exhausted but alive, looked back at him. They had gone out as soldiers following orders. They returned as something more. Proof that humanity would always run toward those in need. "Helm," Jake said quietly, "take us home." As the Defiant settled into orbit around Earth, Jake thought about what they had accomplished. They had answered a call for help 200 years too late. But in doing so, they had saved billions more. They had shown the galaxy what it meant when humans said, "We are coming to help." 20 years had passed since the Battle of Corvin. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood in his office on the Mars Orbital Command Station. Through the large window, he could see ships coming and going. Human vessels, alien vessels, all moving together in peace. The galaxy had changed after Corvin. Humanity had changed it. Jake was reading reports when his assistant knocked on the door. Lieutenant Jennifer Cole entered. She was young, probably 25, born after the battle. She represented a new generation that grew up hearing the stories. "Admiral, you have visitors from Talax Prime. They are here for the anniversary ceremony." Jake nodded. "Send them in." 3 Talaxians entered his office. They were tall, thin beings with blue skin and large eyes. The one in front extended his hand in the human greeting he had learned. "Admiral Morrison, I am Minister Valen. We met briefly 5 years ago at the memorial dedication." Jake shook his hand. "I remember. Welcome back to Mars." "We wanted to come early this year," Valen explained. "There is something we wish to discuss with you before the ceremony. Something important." Jake gestured to the chairs. "Please, sit. What can I do for you?" Valen settled into the chair carefully. "Admiral, 20 years ago your people saved my world. 4 billion lives that would have been lost. We have never forgotten this debt." "You owe us nothing," Jake said quietly. "We did what anyone should have done." "But not everyone would have," Valen replied. "That is the point. When the swarm threatened us, we did not even know. The coalition did not tell us. They did not want to cause panic. But your people came anyway. Not for glory, not for payment. Simply because it was right." He pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic image appeared above Jake's desk. It showed a beautiful structure orbiting Talax Prime. A memorial made of crystal and metal that caught the light of their sun. "We built this to remember," Valen continued. "Every child on Talax Prime learns about the Battle of Corvin in school. They learn about Admiral Patterson and the Indomitable. They learn about the Mrakesh warriors who sacrificed themselves. They learn that when no one else would help, humanity came." Jake felt a lump in his throat. He thought about Patterson, about Kresh, about the thousands who never came home. "That means more than you know," he said. "But we want to do more than remember," Valen said. "Admiral, the Talax Confederation wishes to propose a formal alliance with humanity. Not just a trade agreement or a mutual defense pact, a true alliance. We want our peoples to stand together as yours stood for us." Jake was surprised. "Minister, that is a significant proposal. It would need to be discussed with Earth's government." "We understand, but we wanted you to hear it first. You were there. You know what your people gave for strangers." Valen stood. "The ceremony begins in 2 hours. We will speak more after." After they left, Jake sat quietly, thinking about how much had changed. Before Corvin, humanity had been the newcomers, the young species that other civilizations looked down on. After Corvin, everything was different. The ceremony was held at the Memorial Plaza on Mars. Thousands of people attended. Humans, aliens, military personnel, and civilians. They gathered around the central monument, a towering structure of black stone with names carved into every surface. Jake stood on the platform with other survivors of the battle. Commander Lisa Park was there. She commanded a battle group now. Sophie Grant, promoted to captain, stood at attention in her dress uniform. Even old Helen Ross had come. Now nearly 120 years old, kept alive by modern medicine. The ceremony began with a moment of silence. Jake looked at the names on the monument. So many names. So many lives given for others. A young cadet, no more than 20, stepped forward to read the traditional words. Her voice was clear and strong. We gather today to remember those who answered the call, who heard the desperate plea of strangers and chose to help. We remember Admiral Gregory Patterson and the crew of the Indomitable. We remember Warrior Prime Kresh and his warriors. We remember every man and woman who gave their lives at Corvin so that others might live. She paused, and the crowd responded in unison. We remember. We honor. We continue their legacy. After the official ceremony, there was a reception. Jake found himself surrounded by people wanting to talk. Young officers asking about the battle, reporters wanting interviews, diplomats discussing alliances. He managed to slip away to a quieter corner where Lisa Park was standing with a drink. Quite a crowd, Lisa said. Every year it gets bigger, Jake replied. More people want to remember. That is good. They should remember. Not just what happened, but why it happened. Lisa looked at the monument. We went because it was right. Not because it was smart or safe or practical, just because it was right. Sophie Grant joined them. I was talking to some of the younger officers. They call Corvin the moment humanity proved itself, like it was a test we passed. It was not a test, Jake said firmly. It was just people trying to help other people. That is all it ever was. Maybe, Sophie replied, but it changed how the galaxy sees us. Before Corvin, we were the aggressive newcomers, the warlike species everyone worried about. After Corvin, we became the protectors, the ones who stand up when others cannot. Jake knew she was right. In the 20 years since the battle, humanity had been asked to help resolve conflicts across Coalition space, to mediate disputes, to protect colonies, not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because other species trusted them to do the right thing. The Marrakesh had become humanity's closest allies. Their warrior culture resonated with the human military tradition. Together, they had formed a mutual defense pact that other species were now joining. Even the species that had dismissed humanity's warnings before Corvin had apologized. The Coalition Council now included human representatives in leadership positions. As the reception continued, Jake noticed Helen Ross sitting alone, looking at the monument. He walked over and sat beside her. Mrs. Ross, I'm glad you could make it. The old woman smiled. I come every year. As long as I can still travel, I will be here. Your speech before we left, Jake said. It meant a lot to the fleet. Knowing why we were going. Who we were fighting for. I told the truth. My daughter and her family were gone. But you saved other families. Other children got to grow up because of what you did. She looked at him with eyes that had seen a century of life. Admiral, do you have children? 2 daughters, both grown now. One is a doctor, one is a teacher. Good. They live in a galaxy where people help each other. Where species stand together. That is your legacy. That is what Patterson and all those others died for. Jake nodded, unable to speak. Later that evening, after the crowds had gone, Jake returned to his office. He had a message waiting from Earth. The Council had reviewed Talax's proposal for alliance. They wanted his opinion. Jake thought about it carefully as he composed his response. An alliance with Talax would strengthen both peoples. But more than that, it would be a statement. A declaration that the bonds formed at Corvin were real and lasting. He wrote his recommendation. Approve the alliance. Honor those who died by building something lasting with those they saved. As he finished the message, his door chimed. Lisa Park entered without waiting for permission. She had a bottle and 2 glasses. I thought you might want company, she said, pouring them both a drink. They sat in silence for a moment, looking out at the stars. Do you ever wonder, Lisa asked, what would have happened if we had not gone? If we had listened to the Coalition and stayed home? Every day, Jake admitted. The Talax cluster would be dead. 4 billion people gone, The swarm would have kept spreading. By now, it might have consumed half the coalition. But we lost so many, Lisa said quietly. Half the fleet. Patterson, Kresh, thousands of good people. I know, and I remember every name on that monument. Jake raised his glass. But I also know what they died for. Not for nothing. Not for pride or territory, they died so others could live. There is honor in that. They drank in silence, remembering. The next morning, Jake received a message from his daughter Emma. She was the doctor, working at a hospital on Talax Prime. Her message included a video of her with Talaxian children. Dad, these kids were born after Corvin. They grow up learning about what you all did. They call Earth the Defender World. They dream about meeting humans and saying thank you. I just thought you should know. What you did matters. Every single day, it matters. Jake watched the video 3 times. Young Talaxian children laughing and playing, completely unaware of how close they had come to never existing. That afternoon, he approved several new initiatives, exchange programs between Earth and Talax, joint training exercises with the Emrakesh, a new research station studying methods to detect and prevent future swarm-type threats. The galaxy was working together now in ways that would have been impossible before Corvin. Species that had barely spoken to each other were now partners. The coalition had reformed its entire emergency response system, ensuring that threats would be addressed quickly rather than debated endlessly. As Jake worked through the day, he thought about what Admiral Patterson had said in those final moments. We did not come here for glory. We came because someone needed help. Those words had become more than a memorial inscription. They had become humanity's creed. A statement of values that defined how humans interacted with the galaxy. When schools taught history, they taught about Corvin. When diplomats negotiated treaties, they invoked the spirit of Corvin. When young people joined the military, they swore to uphold the example set at Corvin. The battle had lasted only hours, but its impact would last forever. That evening, Jake attended a dinner with the Talaxian delegation. Minister Valen was there, along with several others. The conversation was warm and genuine. These were not diplomats playing politics. These were friends remembering a shared history. Admiral, Valen said near the end of the meal, I have a personal question, if I may. Of course. Do you ever regret going to Corvin? Knowing the cost, knowing how many died, do you ever wish you had stayed home? Jake considered the question carefully. I regret every life lost. I wish we could have saved everyone. But go to Corvin? No, I do not regret that, because the alternative was doing nothing while billions died. I could not live with that then. I could not live with it now. Valen nodded slowly. That is what makes humanity special, I think. Other species calculate costs and benefits, weigh options, debate endlessly. But humans, when someone needs help, you just go. You do not wait for permission or approval, you just go. Is that so different? Jake asked. Yes, Valen replied. Very different, and very necessary. The galaxy needed someone to be that way, to be the ones who run toward danger instead of away from it. As Jake left the dinner and walked through the Mars station corridors, he passed groups of young cadets. They saluted sharply, their eyes full of respect and determination. They were the next generation, the ones who would carry forward the legacy of Corvin. He wondered what challenges they would face, what calls for help they would answer. But he was confident they would answer, because that was what humans did now. That was who they had proven themselves to be. The galaxy knew that when darkness came, when evil threatened the innocent, humanity would stand in the gap. Not for glory or reward. Not because it was easy or safe. Simply because it was right. 20 years after Corvin, the memorial stood as a testament to sacrifice. But it also stood as a promise. A promise that no one would ever face extinction alone again. That when the call for help went out, someone would answer. And that someone would be human. Jake returned to his quarters late that night. Before sleeping, he did what he always did. He pulled up the list of names from the Indomitable. Patterson's name was at the top. He read through them slowly, remembering faces and voices. We kept our promise. Admiral, He whispered to the empty room. We made sure no one fights alone. Somewhere in the galaxy, on 100 worlds, beings slept safely because of what happened at Corvin. Children grew up who would never have been born. Families stayed together who would have been torn apart. And in the dark between the stars, where the swarm once spread death and destruction, there was now only empty space. Silent. Peaceful. The SOS that had traveled 200 years through the void had finally been answered. Not in time to save those who sent it, but in time to save countless others. Humanity had awakened its armada, and the galaxy would never be the same. And they had proven that sometimes, the most important thing was not winning or surviving. It was standing up and fighting when no one else would. Making sure that when darkness came, no one had to face it alone. The fleet had gone out to answer an old message. They had awakened an armada. But more than that, they had reminded the galaxy of a simple truth. A truth that had been forgotten in 3,000 years of civilization. The measure of a species was not in its technology or its conquests. It was in what it was willing to sacrifice for those who could not stand alone. On Earth, in homes and cities across the planet, families gathered to watch the fleet's return. Parents explained to children what had happened, why so many had not come home. And in those explanations, in the tears and the pride and the sorrow, a new generation learned the lesson that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. We answer the call, every time, no matter what, because in the end, that is what it means to be human. Ips and their allies driving straight into the swarm. It was a sight that would have made any historian weep, a tiny force throwing itself against impossible odds, not for victory, but to buy time for others to live. The swarm noticed them. 3 trillion units shifted course, forming a wall of death between the fleet and their goal. All ships, Jake transmitted. We are engaging. Remember your training. Watch each other. And if this is the end, make it count. The Defiance weapons came online, joining the fire of 200 other ships. Space seemed to burn as humanity made its stand at Corvin. And to you, Captain. Tell the galaxy the Mrakesh died well. The 3 Mrakesh ships moved between the fleeing human ships and the swarm. Their weapons opened up in a devastating display, creating a wall of fire. It bought precious seconds, enough for the hyperspace drives to reach full charge. Jump in 10 seconds, Navigator Chris Wade announced. Through the view screen, Jake watched as the swarm surrounded the Mrakesh ships. They fought to the last. Their shields flared bright as millions of tiny machines pressed against them. He saw one ship's shields fail. The swarm descended on it like hungry fish. In seconds, there was nothing left. Jump! Reality twisted, and they were gone. They left the swarm behind in normal space. But Jake knew it was only temporary. The swarm had seen them. It knew the fleet was coming, and now it would be ready. Ow's what it means to lose someone. Go and show the galaxy what humanity stands for. The message ended. The bridge was silent. Jake saw tears on several faces, but he also saw determination on all of them. All ships, he transmitted on the fleet channel. This is Captain Morrison. Report your status. One by one, 200 captains confirmed their ships were ready. In the end, it was not just humans. 70 Mrakesh warships had joined them. There were also a few ships from other species whose crews had volunteered against their government's orders. Admiral Patterson's voice came over the channel one final time. Fleet, this is Guardian Actual. We are ready to jump in 60 seconds. Remember, we are not going for glory or conquest. We are going because people needed help and no one came. We are going to make sure that never happens again. All ships, prepare for jump on my mark. Jake gripped his chair's armrests. Around him, his crew sat at their stations, their faces serious and determined. Mark. Space opened up in 200 places at once. The Armada disappeared from the solar system in a flash of light. Behind them, Earth and all of humanity waited and hoped. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans said, "We are coming to help. Do not help, then who will?" Across human space, the same conversation happened on thousands of ships. Old veterans came back to serve. Civilians volunteered in huge numbers. The recruitment centers could not handle everyone who wanted to help. Something had awakened in humanity. It was something old and powerful. It was the same thing that made their ancestors run toward danger instead of away from it. It was the need to stand between the innocent and the threat, no matter what it cost. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity heard a cry for help. They were about to discover why every human military uniform had one phrase written on it. The phrase said, "No one fights alone." The shipyards worked without stopping. Hundreds of warships were prepared for battle. Weapons were loaded. Supplies were packed. Crews trained for combat. Earth was getting ready to send its children into the unknown to fight for people they would never meet. Because that was what humans did. When someone called for help, humans answered. Every time, no matter what.